Hello and most welcome to 1976. This is going to be a B edition of 1975, and it's Wittgenstein's Non-Cognitivism Explained and Vindicated. By good old Eugen Fischer. This is also the year 1976, the same as the number, when Richard Dawkins came out with his breakthrough book, The Selfish Gene, and also when the new term meme got into the common vernacular. So meme is analogous to morpheme and gene. The selfish gene. Last time in 1975, we looked at gestures, how they bring together what seem to be cut apart, to be linear, analytic, bring that together with what is synthetic, holistic. Both things participate in Wittgenstein. He brings in criterion, or the doings. The doings could be compared to gestures. They are motoric doings. And they always accompany overt speech. Speech.
Yes, that was page 73, I think.
Yes, indeed, 73. So part of the conscious process is what we actually do with our limbs, our bodies, our arms. So consciousness is not solely into a black box hidden somewhere in the insideness. Consciousness is as well on the outsideness. The two together as a Rosenian Klein bottle brings the exogenous into the endogenous. Sounds and hand movements together in harmony, in beautiful harmony, togetherness. This is what brings about wholeness, the entirety. In quantum mechanics, that's called the global reality, or quantum relativity by Carlo Rovelli. Everything comes into play. And the oppositions between gesture and speech makes for necessary instability, and instability that creates harmony, permanence. Not one without the other, they are both present, although contradictory. Yeah, it's in David McNeil, we made another lecture, the instability fuels thinking for speaking as it seeks a solution. Could be compared also to the Kuhnian paradigm shifts, where the instability that comes when you search, when you've been looking for coherence, make do for the growth of a new paradigm, rising like phoenix out of the ashes of the old one. The old one is literally destroyed, but still present. I like the rising idea. You can use the gesture of innerness turning into outwardness. It's a constant development in speech. It is never fixed, fossilized, or petrified. It's not petrified, it's moving. I think since this is the day of the spiral, Ian McGilchrist said something. He didn't like the idea of everything being in a circle. Said it returns almost to the same point, but it's a level up. So it's a spiral going up. Our bodies are also spirals in the deepest sense. So spirals, permanence, the oppositions that come together either in the coastline of Norway or in speech and gesture, talk and criterion, exogenous and endogenous. I will now continue where I left off in 1975, about 6 lines down the page, 73. But perhaps, surprisingly, Wittgenstein then develops another interpretation of that phrase, and thus obtains a related claim he thinks is actually true of some cases of reading. The moment he does not look for characteristic sensations, but rather takes the situation or context of utterance into account as well. He can identify various differences between the way in which the sound of the familiar letter comes into actual reading, and the sound he pronounces comes when he looks at the mere flourish. Flourish.
Yummy, yummy, yummy.
And these differences allow us to say that when we read familiar letters in print, the sounds come to us automatically in a way they do not come when we look at unfamiliar marks. Marks. When reading printed letters, the sounds do come to us in a special way. This much properly understood is not merely meaningful, but even true. Even true, true. From this clarification, however, Wittgenstein proceeds to refute the generic proposition that attracts him. Now, what is there in the proposition that reading is a quite particular process? Quite particular process. It presumably means that when we read one particular process takes place, which we recognize, and this monkey and this proposition Wittgenstein shows is simply false. It is not false because we cannot grow aware of any potentially pertinent mental process. Mental process. There are, of course, many more or less characteristic sensations in reading a printed sentence. And it is not difficult to call such a sensation to mind. To mind. But the present proposition is false, because all such processes and experiences occur only in some rather than in all cases of reading, When we read a page of print, which is indeed a uniform experience, uniform, like a spiral. Uniform. Our eye passes over printed lines differently from the way it passes over arbitrary pothooks and flourishes. I am not speaking here of what can be established by observing the movements of the eyes of a reader, but about our experience. The eye passes with particular ease, and yet it doesn't skid. It does not skid. And at the same time, involuntary speech goes on in the imagination. In the imagination, the sounds come automatically. That is how it is when I read German and other languages, printed or written, as I usually do. But it is not, as he seems to ascertain by further experiments, when reading a text printed exclusively in capital letters, or reading our script from the right to left, nor, as he suggests, apparently without making the experiment. When turning Morse code into letters, Morse code. Very good. So we are not dealing with the same mental process in all cases of reading. No identity, no essence. Nor essence.
No meme.
No meme, exactly. there is no one characteristic process which we recognize whenever we read. To sum up, Wittgenstein experimentally reproduces reading situations for three purposes. Three purposes. Once more the triad. 3 times 4 is 12. Through 7 makes 5. First, elicit what things he is inclined to say in abstract reflection. Abstract reflection. Spontaneously and without warrant.
Warrant.
Warrant. About what happens when he reads, what experience he then has. Second, to get clear on what content and import these things have in concrete terms, what kind of experience they might advert to. And third, to refute the claims thus obtained. Refutation, very Wittgensteinian, by showing them false. No pertinent experience occurs sufficiently generally. In this way, he makes himself aware of a general urge to misunderstand that drives him to make leaps of thought, which lead him to conclusions he finds compelling, even though he has no warrant for them, and which in fact are simply false. False. Simply false. All three steps are in line with the non-theoretical precepts summed up by NT above. At none of these three stages does Wittgenstein advance an explanation or hypothesis. Hypothesis. Rather, he allows himself to say what struck strike him as Compelling. Compelling.
Aroma.
Compelling. And clarifies and refutes these things, like when I read, the words come in a special way without adopting or advancing them. Advancing them at any stage as a hypothesis or explanation. Explanation.
Explanation.
Explanation.
Explanation.
And while he does establish in the process some facts about reading and the experience it may involve, these facts, like the fact that when one reads letters in print, the eye passes with particular ease, yet does not skid, are familiar to any proficient reader. We merely need to be reminded of facts we did not think of in abstract reflection. By contrast, we do learn new facts and can perhaps be said to obtain some sort of explanation as the repeated execution of those three steps has us grow aware of a general urge to misunderstand that systematically drives us from truisms to perplexing conclusions. Perplexing conclusions. But these new facts are not about the subject of the philosophical investigation, reading or sudden understanding. Sudden understanding. But about our thinking about it. We do not explain the phenomenon that perplexes us, say, sudden understanding,
Sudden.
but come to understand why we came to find it perplexing. Improved self-understanding helps us see through self-made mystery. 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 So far, we have explored how urges to, to misunderstand may give rise to voodoo problems. Voodoo problems. Have explained why problems thus raised license therapeutic aims and require non-theoretical methods for the pursuit. The pursuit. And have spelled out a bit how Wittgenstein treats problems with such methods.
Such methods.
In pursuit of such aims. Aims. That is. We have explained and vindicated Wittgenstein's non-cognitive approach by means of a new meta-philosophical account of some of the problems he addresses. Now that we know what the approach is and that it is sensible in response to one particular kind of problem, we assess its philosophical relevance. Relevance like a spiral, reveal, relevance. How prevalent are problems of this kind in philosophy? And how idiosyncratic is the therapeutic chief aim Wittgenstein adopts in response to them? In response. It strikes me as very pertinent.
Ouch.
It strikes me. 8. The relevance of the approach. As Wittgenstein practices it. philosophy is a struggle against urges to misunderstand, seeking to dispel disquiet. 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 As few philosophers appear to share much of this disquiet, Wittgenstein himself was understandably pessimistic about the relevance of his approach to others, and addressed his work only to a few kindred spirits, about 20, I think, a very few among a number very small. As the philosophical disquiet he had in mind is unwarranted. Unwarranted. He strongly advises even his best students against pursuing philosophy. What? Oh! Which is for people who cannot leave it alone, alone, alone. Is it me? I don't know. Presumably, for those in whom urges to misunderstand cause an intellectual discomfort too intense to be ignored. It seems he thought his approach of interest only to philosophers who suffer from the same kind of emotional problem and can glean from his work diagnostic and therapeutic techniques to identify and solve them, roughly in the manner in which people suffering from depression can profit from a skilled psychotherapist account of his treatment of his own depression. Depression. But in fact, the non-cognitive approach Wittgenstein pioneered has a significantly greater relevance. Greater relevance. It is revealing the spiral. For a start, there is a second therapeutic aim in addition to the one Wittgenstein pursued versus enabling a subject to give up without regret endeavors utterly pointless by his own light.
Oh, light.
Own lights even. It was a plural, sorry. A philosopher is engaged in such an endeavor, for instance, when he constructs theories for the sole purpose of solving ill-motivated reconciliation problems. Reconciliation problems, ill-motivated reconciliation problems. When he raises and addresses such problems in the grip of urges to misunderstand, some such non-theoretical methods as those presented will be necessary to make him see through and abandon his pointless efforts. Efforts. He abandons them. He'll leave them. That is the non-cognitive approach is relevant at least to the extent to which philosophers are in the grip of such urges, and make efforts for the sole purpose of solving ill-motivated reconciliation problems. And they are ill-motivated. I shall now provide some pointers and examples that first license the working hypothesis that such efforts have been prominently made into different areas and periods in philosophy, and second, enable you to follow up the hypothesis by identifying in your areas of expertise the relevant elements, urges to misunderstand driving philosophical reflection, ill-motivated reconciliation problems formulated in the grip and theories developed for the sole purpose of solving problems, thus formulated, thus formulated. There are different kinds of pertinent urges to misunderstand. That is, of inferential urges that are autonomous and irrational and drive the formulation of ill-motivated reconciliation problems. They are of different kinds, representing or arising from different cognitive phenomena, including attention bias effects, belief bias effects, prototype effects, and the characteristic mistakes in metaphorical and analogical reasoning. Reasoning! Great. Reasoning. Thus, the presentist urge represents an attentional bias against context, while the mentalist urge, that was our main concern, schema 1 or I, arises mainly from a recurrent and deep mistake in analogical reasoning. I think that's an enough odd word to stopping at. I think it's unique. I hope it's unique. Analogical reasoning. 1976.
No.
Do you know the page number by
Yes, I think it's page 76. Let me see.
So I will give some examples of unintentional automatic doings or thinking. They are like conditioned things that you cannot stir away from. You feel like obliged to do them, but you're not really thinking about them. The first one, I think that's the predominant thing in the classical physics, either or, which is matter or non-matter. My colleague Kalle would like estain and non-estain, the existence or non-existence. And of course, maybe the most prominent example is this fixation with inside and outside. The thinking is inside somewhere, not clearly specified, and it cannot be seen, talked about, or anything else. And it has its equivalence in the outside, the transcendental words of Tegmark or Hugh Everett. The second one, which I want to approach, especially because there is a pertinent example in 1976, I call that essentialism. Looking for the pure essence, or all is same. It's all likewise, identical even, like the atoms in the Newtonian take, where you can actually look at the atoms somehow, and you can look inside of them and say, this one is the same as that one. A bit on the side, quantum mechanics proven that to be impossible. Identity do not exist in nature as such. Richard Dawkins' meme is a good example of that, actually. he says that there are tendencies in human culture that are identical, just like genes in some way are identical, but with different purposes. And of course, this one you are quite aware of, Kalle. The search for the one origin. Sloppy handwriting. Origin. Somewhere I had the first thought of doing something, something that is now questioned by David McNeill, the idea that gestures come from thinking. I think something, therefore I do a gesture. He shows that gestures and thinking and talking come simultaneous, synchronized at the very same time. There is no time lapse there. So they are not disjunct. There could be several others. There's 20, 30. Some ones I've forgotten here in this list, but this is at least a good start. Stop the recording. So I come to think, because I mentioned this earlier, Ian McKilcris, he didn't like the idea or the metaphor of a circle. He preferred spiral. Once you're stuck into this automatic thinking, I think you are in the cul-de-sac. You are in the circle, imaginary. You stop your thinking and you need to go back to the original. It will be an incessant urge to look for the original. It will never stop. The meme will never stop. It will go on and on. And I think also that in the end, you will start thinking that, maybe there's something wrong how I thought before. I need to change that. It wasn't original or essential or enough, staying or inside, outside. It will be an incessant pain. We can see some of these. I don't know the page number really. 74, I think. The page you have here, yeah. First, just an extra mentioning the third line, which is indeed is very interesting, thinking of this is the spiral day. Like in fact, when one reads letters in print, the eye passes with particular ease, yet does not skid. Many years after this was actually pointed to in eye physiology. There is a specific spiral there, which is actually chaotic. It's called a saccade. Do you remember the saccades?
Vaguely.
It's a sort of spiral movement your eye do all over the text when you read or when you look as well. Called saccades. Should be included in the lecture of spirals, so it was a good thing it came up. I don't think it's a good chance. I think this is actually some sort of synchronicity. And in the beginning of subchapter 8 or subparagraph 8, a bit further down, the under 8, the relevance of the approach. There, yeah. So Wittgenstein himself, he was very pessimistic of the relevance of his approach to others. So he only addressed his work to a few kindred spirits. This is important to remember. It was never intended for the broad public, maybe a couple of dozens of people. So he didn't really put enough or a specific effort to be understandable. That's partly the reason why different translator or people who try to read him through interpreters of different kinds are very helpful. And what I do in this series is I compare them. They all make their little differences. Francis Y. Lin was usually pointing to they are correct, but they're not subtle enough. There is like more filigrane details you can go into. Details! So if we go to the second paragraph here, it's about 4 lines down. A philosopher is engaged in such an endeavor with the unintentional doings, when he constructs theories for the sole purpose of solving ill-motivated reconciliation problems. And there, in the nutshell, we have the search for a true inside, or as in Dawkins' case, he usually looks for a true outside. It's a material cause for everything, the atom or the DNA that underlies all of reality, the singular cause for everything. Or why not inside, outside, or constantly looking for the original forever and ever and ever. It will never end. There can always be a new original. And I think this is very much the circle. It's not a healthy development, it's stranded. I like to call it a cul-de-sac. And in the next lecture, we'll go into more detail on how this can look, but it's usually done by false analogies or metonymy. I would say metonymy and metaphor is very usual. These things are very important, but if you do them wrong and too hastily, you end up in problems. Let's see if it doesn't get too long. This Caleb, you want to go?
Okay.
Got the microphone. Just check it's recording now.
So let me comment on this paragraph. It's on page, let me see, this is page 73.
73, okay.
And
It's actually before, that's where I started, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Yeah.
so it's and the word is here uniform.
Oh yeah, missed that one.
So it's this phrase here. This is important, so I read from here. Now, what is there in the proposition that reading is a quite particular process? It presumably means that when we read, one particular process takes place, which we recognize. In this proposition, Wittgenstein shows it's simply false. It is not false because we cannot grow aware of any potentially pertinent mental process. There are, of course, many more or less characteristic sensations in reading a printed sentence. And it's not difficult to call such sensations to mind, but the present proposition is false because all such processes or experiences occur only in some, rather than in all cases of reading. When we read a page of print, which is indeed a uniform experience. Our eye passes over printed lines differently from the way it passes over arbitrary hooks and flourishes.
Flourishes!
So let me, okay, I could actually read the parentheses also. I'm not speaking here I'm not speaking here on what can be established by observing the movements of the eyes of a reader, but about our experience.
Oh.
But I'm asking if it's really possible to distinguish these two things, experience and the movement of the eyes.
No.
They are entangled. So it's not clear what is Fischer's own interpretation, but what Wittgenstein says. But I say that this phrase here, where we read a page of print, that would be an uniform experience. I don't think that is Wittgenstein's idea.
No, I was actually thinking that as well.
So it cannot, that's not possible. No single reading doesn't resemble another reading.
Family resemblance only.
Yes, indeed there is certain superficial resemblance, like family resemblance.
Like cousin and uncle and sister-in-law.
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to refer to one paper by Lin. This is from 2017 paper.
Oh yeah, that one. That's a good one actually.
About
great, yeah, I like that one. Very good.
He says here, where is the? I want to see where is the eyes. Yes, here. The keyword is eyes. It is scarcely possible. One reason is that at these two times, the position of my eyes are highly unlikely to be completely the same. So are the lightning conditions. So no experience can be the same as some experience.
Like identical. It's always difference.
Excuse me. So they can. So this is false. Uniform if there can be an uniform experience. They can family resemblance. Yes, absolutely. Because when you begin to speak about uniform experience, you actually end up thinking that everything is planned.
Yeah, and it's an essence as well, some sort
yes, essence. And you end up with meme thinking.
You end up with meme thinking because you think there is a universal thing like reading. And then you also end up with the inside. Because this is where it resides. The place of the meme. Yeah, very good. I do like that.
So simply put, what is a meme? Meme means imitation, and when you think about meme imitation, then you get up looking for the original, the true reading.
Yeah.
That once occurred, perhaps.
Yeah. The same as Dawkins' 1976 book, The Selfish Gene. It's so much fascinating with the same. And I was completely absorbed by that book when I was pretty young. And I remember going into the circle, thinking the same thing over and over again, and start looking for, hey, Anna is showing up the same meme as Busse, and why not Chandrasekhar in India and Will Smith in South Africa and so on. So I was caught up with this. I couldn't control it. I didn't know where it was coming from. And the thing that it was shared by so many other people made it even like more pertinent. And you mentioned that in Jehovah's Witnesses. Have you met the truth?
When did you learn the truth?
Yeah, okay, that's how it is. So we get caught up with that. It's very hard to resist.
So there is the difference between, say, uniform experience, meme, and family resemblance. The difference is tiny but significant.
Yeah, tiny but significant. Yeah.
So we could say that family resemblance is that one reading resembles another reading, of course. But it's not about experience.
No. And it's not identical in the sense of Newtonian identity.
And experience is about context also. That is very important. While for Dawkins, he ignores the context.
Yeah.
There is no context really in Dawkins.
No. It's just a meme. It's similar to Tegmark, it's similar to Hugh Everett, because their worlds are memes outside. Inside and outside is not that different, actually.
see. So he mentions different, what happens when, let me see, the eye passes with particular ease and does not skid. Skid, what is it in Swedish? I don't, slide, so to say. And at the same time, involuntary speech goes on in the imagination. The sound comes automatically. That's how it is when I read German. Another language is printed or written as I usually do, but it's not as he seems to assert and prefer the experiment. We read and express exclusively in capital letters. Actually, all ancient manuscripts are only in capital letters. So it's interesting. Or reading our script from right to left. So we are not dealing with the same meta process in all visual reading.
No.
I think this is actually misleading from, this is a paraphrase by Fischer. I don't think there is never
that's dangerous, isn't it?
So,
Fischer, this is why it's so good to have different interpreters of Wittgenstein. We see that they slid into dangerous thing here.
So let me say it again. So Fischer makes here a mistake, I would say, in the sense that no, there is never ever a meta process in any of these readings.
No, not the same with the same mental process.
No, we can say yes, there is familiar resemblance because they are about reading any text. But there is never ever a meta process. Why is meta process problematic? Why is why does meta process not exist? Never ever. Because it's all context dependent. Perhaps we could say like that.
Context, global reality.
Global reality, absolutely. Yes, let's end there.
It's a global take. It's all the relations you want to say now.
Yes.
And here we have the guy, Richard Dawkins. It's good. Okay, thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl, for participating. Thank you everyone for listening in. Have a very beautiful morning, day, or afternoon. Bye-bye for now.
This is fun.
Which one?
It's coming now. And the original list, of course, the biggest.
Yeah, okay.
There is no room for the original.
Okay. Thank you very much. Nice one. Bye-bye.